the light. When the youth them know we gotta try.
So why we allow this administration to erode our democracy? This is a democratic society, and therefore every creed and race must find an equal place.
Yeah, Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try.
So I am calling on every youth, I am calling on every citizen. Let us unite and save Trinidad and Tobago. For far too long we have been exploited. For far too long we have been neglected. The time has come where we must stand united in order to save our country. Yes, my brothers and my sisters.
Yeah, Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try.
And let us fight to defend our democracy in this country. Let us stand together.
Yeah. We cry from together. And the way on them like they don't care about somebody now. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try.
So why we allow this administration to erode our democracy? This is a democratic society, and therefore every creed and race must find an equal place.
Yeah, Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try.
So I am calling on every youth, I am calling on every citizen. Let us unite and save Trinidad and Tobago. For far too long we have been exploited. For far too long we have been neglected. The time has come where we must stand united in order to save our country. Yes, my brothers and my sisters.
Yeah, Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try.
And let us fight to defend our democracy in this country. Let us stand together.
Yeah. We cry from together. And the way on them like they don't care about somebody now. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try.
So why we allow this administration to erode our democracy? This is a democratic society, and therefore every creed and race must find an equal place.
Yeah, Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try. Victor vibes. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them know we gotta try.
So I am calling on every youth, I am calling on every
we gotta try. Victorize. If you want to see a better life, yeah, share the light. When the youth them, no, we gotta try.
And let us fight to defend our democracy in this country. Let us stand together.
That patient care is being compromised owing to a critical shortage of specialized ICU nurses.
The Ministry of Health started proactively to recruit ICU nurses in 2020. We recruited 7 from Cuba in 2020 and 18 more in 2021. In addition, we started local training of our RNs. In 2020, we trained 196, and a cohort right now is being trained of 100. The ratios of nurses to patients at CUVA in our ICU and HCU are as follows. In our ICU, it is 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, depending on how many patients occupy the 28 ICU beds. And at the HDU, where you need a slightly lower level of care, it is 1 to 4.
The minister explained that government has installed a centralized monitoring system in the parallel healthcare system.
In managing a pandemic in scarce resources, when I visited CUVA, there was no centralized e-monitoring system. We installed that. We have a centralized e-monitoring system with nurses, consultants, and registrars, where the following vitals are monitored electronically to compensate for the human deficiency: arterial blood pressure, SpO2, pulse rates, and cardiac rhythms. When any of these patients decompensate, alarms will ring in this centralized e-monitoring system.
Minister Diyal Singh said 1,482 samples have been tested positive for the presence of the Delta variant.
As of September 25th, 2021, is 1,482. And the criteria being used to test all variants, including the Delta variant, are as follows. A. All persons locally having entered or belonging to migrant populations with a positive COVID-19 test result. B. All repatriated persons arriving with a positive test result. C. Fully vaccinated individuals with a cycle threshold or CT value of less than 20. D. Any clusters from a community case with a cycle threshold CT value of less than 20. And E. Requests from health institutions, both in the public and private sectors, where patients fit the criteria as outlined in the Ministry of Health's protocols.
And that's news on U97.5 FM, MCTV, WBHM, the Voice of Rock, and Fun Radio. Sponsored by Newsday.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life, because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Okay, Rudolph, make a right. Then, oh, hold on. Mrs. Claus sent a WhatsApp. The elves are hungry. Pick up a Royal Castle Queen bucket, a King bucket, some royal wings, a family meal, a few combos, some extra delicious coleslaw, crinkle-cut fries, potato salad, and a snack box for yourself. Oh, and don't forget that delicious honey mustard sauce. It's really lashing. Okay, Rudolph, let's get that delicious local Trini flavor. Royal Castle, here we come. Royal Castle is the local something that makes it all taste better. Happy holidays from Royal Castle.
You're locked on to U97.5 Hot Like Pepper Multicultural Radio. Well, Mr. Arnold Roberts is not here today, but we have Mr. Victor Roberts to carry on the show. Welcome, sir.
Blessed good day, my brother Koke.
Yes.
Blessed good evening and welcome to douglAR Radio on U97.5 FM, Hot Like Pepper. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Victor Roberts, for today, sitting in for the Honorable Senator Arnold Roberts, who had to go to the Senate today to deal with the people's business. So nevertheless, let's get it on. Today, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to operate in Trinidad and Tobago under a constitutional crisis with so many forms of political contamination, not knowing as to the limit of its spread, even while we are seeing and witnessing in this country the destruction and the erosion of our constitution. And today I am asking, why is Trinidad and Tobago so quiet? I mean, we have seen all that is happening in our country. We have seen so many different breaches within this country in relation to our constitution. And yet, to the end of the day, I am trying to understand how come Trinidad and Tobago is so quiet. I mean, this is not a jokey thing, you know. This is not a joke thing, you know. This is serious business. When we look at the structure of governance in Trinidad and Tobago, we understand that as a people, we are governed by a supreme law. And that supreme law that we are governed by, which is our constitution, that supreme law is, a matter of fact, it is what must and what should and what have to govern the government of this country. And yet, with all this bacchanal that is taking place and all this confusion and all this mayhem, we are seeing that those who are qualified to deal with this type of situation, those who have studied, those who have learned, those who are learned individual, who have the ability to deal with this type of breach, yet to the end of the day, we are wondering why they are so quiet. A matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, I am asking today, who will stand to defend our constitution and our democratic right in this country? We have an organization that is called the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And within all this calamity, all this mayhem and all this calamity that is taking place within our country, yet we cannot hear a collective view from the Law Association. We also have what is known to us as these constitutional lawyers. And today I am asking, where is the integrity in our law association? Where is the integrity in those so-called constitutional lawyers? I know that there was certain individual who, when the country was faced with constitutional matters, we have had individuals who took these matters not only to the Supreme Court in Trinidad and Tobago, but all the way to the Privy Council. And I am wondering if it is that these individuals will only stand to defend the rights of certain individuals in this country based on the fact that there is a salary that is attached to it, or if these individuals will stand idly by and see what is happening in this country and remain quiet simply because there is not a salary that is attached to it. And that is the sad thing in our country. It seems as though that the love of money not only penetrate the religious organization, because they themselves, they are also dumb in all of this. We have had in 2010 and 2015, we have seen religious organization take to the streets with other groups in protest. We have seen religious organization who were quite vocal on every radio station and every newspaper and every television house. They were quite vocal, speaking out as to what they believe at that time in justice. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we are faced with a situation in this country where the future of our country stand to go down the drain. I am speaking about the livelihood of citizens of this country based on what is happening in governance of this country at this point in time. We are seeing from every aspect, from every avenue, the interface and interfering with the political directorate, dipping their hands within the cookie jar, something that the Constitution forewarned us about. And to the end of the day, we have every individual, every collective groups, every religious organization, everybody with their mouth shut. And I am wondering if it's simply because that the Prime Minister of this country had bribed these individuals with grants. And that is what I'm wondering. If these individuals took that grant from this Prime Minister administration as a bribe, because it seems as though nobody, none of these institutions would stand up and condemn what is happening in our country today. And the question is why. You cannot tell me that people seeing, people hearing, people observing what is happening, and yet to the end of the day, people in this country is still taking a backseat with what is happening in our society. Our society, ladies and gentlemen, is a laughingstock to the international community. Our society, ladies and gentlemen, even when Keith Christopher Rowley was at the sitting chair of CARICOM, you will see that the foreign entities will invite the vice chair and not invite Keith Rowley. You have seen Keith Rowley last visit on this climate situation. You have seen what has happened. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are the laughingstock of the Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago was once a gem. We could examine each and every prime minister that passed through this thoroughfare in governance, and each and every one, we have not seen a breach, a blatant disrespect for our constitution as what we are seeing under this administration. We have seen our constitution tested. Basdeo Pandey was one of the individuals who tested our constitution when he had appointed losing candidates to become senators, and the constitution was tested, and to the end of the day, Basdeo Pandey was right and was allowed, according to law, to make these losing candidates senators. Today, our constitution is this constitution today. It is not a test by this administration, you know. It is blatantly a disregard for law and order. It is a blatant attack on our democracy. It's a blatant attack and abuse of power by this administration. Ladies and gentlemen, I am asking today, would we as a people sit quietly and allow what is happening in this country to continue under this administration. That is what I am wondering. I am not saying that the constitution is perfect, but while we look forward for constitutional reform, we must defend what is now existing. And within what is existing is what we are using to, 1, elect official, 2, to govern the country, 3, to appoint individuals, 4, to remove individuals, and 5, even to incarcerated individuals. This is what we use. We use the constitution which is available, even while we recognize that constitution reform is needed. And simply because there is not we does not have in the parliament on one side the necessary majority to make these changes, I am an advocate for constitutional reform. But in the absence of that, ladies and gentlemen, we must hold the government accountable for what we use to elect them, what they are using part or partially to govern us. We must hold them accountable. And this is the position that the people of this country, like, apparently they are not prepared to take. We have seen a situation. We are faced with a situation. When you look at the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution gives us 3 distinct entities, which is called the separation of powers. The Constitution makes it quite clear that we have the executive, we have the legislature, and we also have the judiciary. The doctrine of the separation of powers require that the principal institution of state, which is the 3 that I mentioned before, should be clearly divided in order to safeguard citizens' liberty and safeguard also against tyranny. This is what the Constitution is set out for. It is there to protect the rights of us. And ladies and gentlemen, while we look from the executive standpoint, which will also include a president of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, we must understand that even though the president was recommended by the prime minister, the electoral college sits and they voted and anoint the president into office. I am saying that a time must come when the president must understand that her position in relation to the prime minister, there is a time when that must be separated. It matters not if all went to the same school. It matters not if you and the prime minister wife was in the same class. It matters not if you and Camille Robinson Regis was friend. It matters not. That is beside the point. When we elect through the electoral college a president into office, that president responsibility first and foremost is to safeguard that sacred constitution. That president is not there simply to enact bills that come through the parliament and just to appoint independent senators. That president have a responsibility to protect first and foremost our constitution. I remember A&R Robinson, I think was somewhere back in 2000. Somewhere down in 2000 when Basdeo Pandey won the election. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen? When Basdeo Pandey won that election, in quick intervals, we had one Romeo, we had Juliet, and we had Rishma. Romeo, Juliet, and Rishma. 3 of them mash up the Pandey administration. And then in 2001, an election was called, and then we had 1818. Under 1818, we had A.N.R. Robinson, who was the president of the republic. And Mr. Robinson, within his capacity of president, and within his mind and thoughts and belief, he thought within himself, and even as he said, with the power that was invested in him, he took a decision to appoint Patrick Manning as prime minister and not Basdeo Pandey, who was the sitting prime minister before the election. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, sir.
But Robinson took that decision simply because he said he made that decision based on moral and spiritual values. Okay, remember that statement?
Yes, yes, yes.
Right.
Very good, very well.
So he made that statement based on what he said was moral and spiritual values. The reason why I'm using that, ladies and gentlemen, I am using that to say that within the minds of Robinson at that time, Robinson thought within himself that he had an obligation, according to what he believed was spiritual and moral value, to appoint Patrick Manning as the prime minister. Now listen to this. Today, with this president, Madam Paula May Weeks, I am saying that Paula May Weeks, if even borrowing a page from A.N.R. Robinson, because I remember within her discourse in relation to her presidential maiden speech, she said that she have examined the past. She have looked at the positions and the portfolios and the decisions of presidents in the past. And based on looking at that, ladies and gentlemen, she made a wonderful speech on that day. Only to kick down that bucket now, you know. Only to kick that whole speech through out the window. So if Paula May Weeks understood anything about the sacred responsibility of our constitution, then how in God's name would she allow a third party to look at this same merit list, which is the center of controversy at this point in time? How come would Paula May Weeks allow any politician to interfere or interface with that merit list? You see, the Constitution, according to 123(4), it states clearly that when the list reach in the hands of the president shall. What does that mean? The president must. The president have to. The president bound to deliver that list to the parliament. I am saying, ladies and gentlemen, while some of you, and this have absolutely nothing to do with Gary Griffith from where I sit, you know. I ain't dealing with Gary Griffith, you know. I ain't dealing whether Gary Griffith should be appointed or not, you know. That is not my concern, and that is not the issue. The issue with the merit list is not a concern to say that that list would have appointed Gary Griffith. The merit list, according to our constitution, after the Police Service Commission went through this rigorous testing, and they mark according to our scientific points and prepared that merit list, and that merit list was voted upon by those commissioners, and that merit list left that after a vote was passed and went to President House. Ladies and gentlemen, according to our constitution, the president have a responsibility. The president had a responsibility. The only responsibility that the president had on that day was to forward the merit list to the parliament. That was the president's job. That is what the constitution holds the president to do. And when the president fail in delivering that merit list, whether for whatever reason, whether by what interference, whether by who don't like Gary or who like Gary, whether she and Bliss was in the same class, or whether Bliss does spend time in president's house, that is not the point. All that is not the point. The point is the president had a responsibility to forward that list to the parliament. And while some section of Trinidad and Tobago saying to us, let's move on, that situation is now rectified, I am saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, that situation have not been rectified. It will never be rectified under this condition. The president have no moral and spiritual values, according to Robinson. She have no value, no spiritual value, no moral value. She does not have the integrity to appoint any other commission to take over. None whatsoever. We have to deal with the problem. We have to deal with the issue. The issue is that there was a breach in the constitution, and I am saying somebody must be held accountable. It's not a matter of move on. I hear some idiot the other day, some so-called criminologist or wherever he is, talking about scrap the merit list like he's a constitutional lawyer. And that is what happened when these individuals get tied up within the arms of the PNM. That is what happened. This issue is not a UNC issue, you know. This issue is a constitutional issue by the interference of the leaders of the PNM who is now in government. That is the reality. That is the issue. And somebody need to be held accountable. We cannot allow a breach in the constitution. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this constitution is the highest. It is the supreme law of the land. The supreme, a matter of fact, the constitution, it is the greatest, the most precious, the most valuable pieces of laws that is put together to govern all of us. This constitution, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you the power, because I feel someone didn't understand the power yet. This constitution, every and any other law that the parliament, the House of Representatives, bring to this country must fall in line with the constitution. It must take shape within the constitution. It must reflect the constitution. That is the reality of the supreme constitution that we have in Trinidad and Tobago. And we cannot sit idly by and see a series of breaches, something as severe as to cause the whole destruction of an institution that should have been the Independent Police Service Commission, destroyed because of a breach by the president and by whoever, that high-ranking government official, whoever he or she was. That is the reality. We cannot sit idly by as a people, because you see, when you set a precedent in a country, let me tell you how serious it is. There is something that they call case law. When you look at case law, ladies and gentlemen, it simply may very well reflect a decision that is taken by a judge that is not really under pen and paper in relation to even the constitution and the laws of the land. But when that precedent is set as a in relation to a decision that a panel of judges took and arrive at a verdict, you will realize that ever so often that precedent is what all judges will go back to. That precedent is what all magistrates will go back to and look at to make a determination in a matter. That is how serious, when we allow a precedent to be set in a country, that is what happened. And when you look, ladies and gentlemen, at this precedent that is set in the highest office of the land, which is in the office of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, if not corrected with the full blunt of the law, if not corrected, ladies and gentlemen, we will find ourselves going forward in this country with breaches within the office of the president, and we will not be able to correct that situation. That is how serious this is. This is not a joking matter, ladies and gentlemen. This is a matter that will reflect and affect us going forward in terms of our governance. We cannot have, I don't care if it's Prime Minister Rowley, I don't care who it is, but we cannot allow any public official, any Prime Minister to breach, ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution for personal reasons. I don't care if Keith Rowley lost confidence in Gary Griffith. I don't care about that. I don't care if Keith Rowley don't want Gary Griffith. I don't care about that. I don't care if Keith Rowley don't like Gary Griffith. I don't care about that either. What I care about is that if Keith Rowley didn't want Gary Griffith, there is a process, there is a legal, constitutional process to deal with it. And that is how it must be dealt with. And that is why I will continue to make this call until something happens. We can't sweep that under the carpet. I hear one professional say, well, we had to look at that as a dark day, but now we see in the light because a fresh commission is now in place and we need to move on. Move on where? To go where? To go where? In your backyard? Where we going? Where we going? We cannot continue like this. Let me tell you something, Trinidad and Tobago. When a man pelt a stone in a police station, they lock him up and they put him before the court. And the court make a judgment. And he go to prison. And you know what happened? When that happened, ladies and gentlemen, is because the law was enforced. Because the law was enforced. When a man uses obscene language, the police arrest him, take him before the court, state the case, the judge, the magistrate, listen the evidence and make a decision, fine him or send him to prison. You know why? Because the magistrate is bound to follow the law. So what happened to this government? Why this government is above the law? Why we would allow something like this to happen? A breach like this to happen, and yet to the end of the day, we, Trinidad and Tobago, sit down quiet like a bunch of duncy head people, like they ain't knowing what's going on, like they ain't knowing this will affect the livelihood of the children. This will affect the livelihood of the grandchildren. This will affect the livelihood of your great-grand. We are governed by laws because we are not barbaric. We are governed by laws. We obey these laws. All of us, we are called to account to obey this law.